The Sands Hotel ballroom in Las Vegas shimmered under 1,000 crystal lights on that warm September evening in 1962. Dean Martin stood center stage in his impeccably tailored tuxedo, a tumbler of what everyone assumed was whiskey, but was actually apple juice catching the spotlight as he crooned through "Everybody Loves Somebody." The room was packed beyond capacity with high rollers, Hollywood starlets, and tourists who'd mortgaged their vacation saving for a chance to see the king of cool in his element. Cigarette smoke hung in lazy ribbons above the circular tables where champagne flowed, and laughter erupted at Dean's perfectly timed quips between songs. Dean had developed his stage persona into something magical by then, a carefully crafted illusion of effortless charm where every stumble seemed planned, and every forgotten lyric became comedy gold. He swayed slightly at the microphone, perpetuating the myth of the lovable drunk, though he rarely touched alcohol before shows. The audience ate it up. A woman in a sequin gown at table 7 nearly fell out of her chair, laughing, when Dean pretended to forget where he was mid-song, asking the band if they were still in Cleveland. This was the Dean Martin Show before it became a television empire, when Vegas was still finding its identity as the entertainment capital of the world, and Dean was helping write that story one sold-out performance at a time. The orchestra swelled behind him as he transitioned into "That's Amore," and the entire room seemed to pulse with collective joy. Waiters in crisp white jackets navigated the narrow spaces between tables, balancing trays of cocktails and prime rib dinners. The air conditioning struggled against the body heat of nearly 600 people crammed into a space designed for 400. Dean loosened his bow tie with theatrical flair, earning another wave of applause, and launched into an impromptu duet with his piano player, pretending they were singing different songs entirely. It was controlled chaos, manufactured spontaneity, and it worked because Dean understood that people didn't just want to hear him sing. They wanted to feel like they were part of something special, something they could tell their grandchildren about decades later, when Vegas was just a memory and Dean Martin was a legend. Then something shifted in the room's energy. Dean felt it first as a performer's instinct, that inexplicable awareness when the audience's attention splinters. He was mid-verse, something about the moon hitting your "I like a big pizza pie," when he noticed a commotion near the back entrance. Hotel security was having a heated discussion with a middle-aged couple, the woman in a modest floral dress that stood in stark contrast to the evening gown surrounding her, the man in a rumpled suit that had seen better days. They weren't the typical Vegas crowd. The woman was crying, gesturing desperately toward the stage, while the man held what appeared to be a small bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. Dean's voice faltered for just a moment, genuine confusion replacing his practiced charm. The band continued playing, covering for him as they'd been trained to do, but Dean's eyes remained fixed on the disturbance. The woman had broken past security now, moving down the side aisle with determination that bordered on desperation. Hotel staff converged on her position, ready to escort her out before she could disrupt the show further. But something in her face stopped Dean cold. It wasn't the look of a crazed fan or someone seeking attention. It was the face of a mother carrying an unbearable weight, a grief so profound it cut through the smoke and noise and champagne bubbles like a knife through silk. Dean held up his hand, a simple gesture that somehow commanded the attention of everyone in the room. The orchestra trailed off in confused silence. 600 people held their breath. The sudden quiet was shocking after the wall of sound that had filled the space moments before. Dean set down his microphone on the piano with deliberate care and walked to the edge of the stage, squinting against the spotlights to see the woman more clearly. She had stopped in the aisle, frozen by the sudden attention, tears streaming down her face in mascara-stained rivers. "Ma'am," Dean's voice carried across the silent ballroom without amplification, stripped of its usual playful affectation. "What's wrong?" The woman's voice broke as she spoke. "Mr. Martin, I'm so sorry. I know this is wrong. I know we shouldn't be here. But my son," she clutched the blanket tighter. "He's dying. The doctors say maybe days, maybe hours. He's only 7 years old, and all he talks about is you. He has your records, all of them. He sings your songs, even though he can barely breathe anymore. I tried to get tickets. I called everywhere. But everything sold out for months, and we don't have months, and I just thought..." Her voice dissolved into sobs. Dean jumped off the stage without hesitation. his Italian leather shoes hitting the carpeted floor with a soft thud. He crossed the distance to the woman in long strides while the audience watched in stunned silence. Up close, he could see the exhaustion etched into her features, the sleepless nights and hospital vigils written in the dark circles under her eyes. The man beside her, presumably her husband, looked equally shattered, and in the woman's arms, barely visible within the folds of the blanket, was a small face the color of old paper, a child with enormous eyes that seemed too large for his wasted features. "What's his name?" Dean asked softly, his performer's voice replaced by something gentler, more human. "Timothy," the mother whispered. "Timothy James Callahan. He has leukemia. They tried everything." Dean reached out slowly, giving the boy time to pull away if he wanted. But Timothy's thin hand emerged from the blanket and grasped Dean's fingers with surprising strength. "You're really him," the boy breathed, his voice barely audible. "You're really Dean Martin." "I'm really him, kiddo," Dean said, and his smile was genuine now, unguarded in a way that few people ever saw. "You know what? I think this show's gotten a little too formal. What do you say we mix things up?" Without waiting for a response, Dean scooped the fragile child out of his mother's arms, blanket and all, cradling him with the practiced ease of a father who'd raised 7 children of his own. He carried Timothy back toward the stage while 600 people watched in absolute silence, many with tears already forming. The crystal chandelier seemed to dim. Or perhaps it was just that every eye in the room was focused on a man in a tuxedo carrying a dying child through a Vegas showroom like he was carrying the most precious cargo in the world. Dean climbed the steps to the stage one-handed, supporting Timothy against his chest. He settled into the chair beside the piano, adjusting the boy in his lap, so he could breathe easier. The orchestra members looked at each other uncertainly, waiting for a cue that didn't come. Dean ignored them all, his attention focused entirely on the child whose breathing came in shallow, labored gasps. "Timothy," Dean said, "you know, that's Amore." The boy nodded weakly. "I know all your songs, Mr. Martin. Call me Dean. And here's what we're going to do. I'm going to sing and you're going to help me. Can you do that? Can you sing with Dean Martin?" Timothy's eyes widened with something that might have been joy or might have been disbelief. "I can try." Dean nodded to the piano player, who understood immediately and began the opening bars of That's Amore again, but softer this time, more intimate. Dean started singing, his voice rich and warm. But every few words he would pause and Timothy would fill in the gap with his thin, reedy voice that cracked and wavered but never gave up. "When a moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's Amore." The boy's face transformed as he sang, the pain lines smoothing out, replaced by something approaching wonder. The mother stood at the edge of the stage, her hands clasped over her mouth, tears flowing freely now. The father had his arm around her shoulders, supporting her as they watched their dying son sing with his hero. And in the audience, hardened gamblers and jaded showgirls found themselves crying openly, not bothering to wipe away the tears. The Rat Pack had a reputation for toughness, for devil-may-care attitudes and jokes about death and drinking, but this was something different. This was raw humanity, unfiltered and unscripted. Dean sang every song Timothy knew, which turned out to be most of Dean's catalog. They worked through Memories Are Made of This, and returned to me in Volare, the boy's voice growing weaker with each number but never stopping entirely. Between songs, Dean told stories, making Timothy laugh with tales of Frank Sinatra's terrible golf game and Sammy Davis Jr.'s practical jokes. He talked about growing up in Steubenville, Ohio, about his own father who worked in a barber shop and taught him that the measure of a man wasn't his bank account, but in how he treated people when nobody was watching. "You know what, Timothy?" Dean said during one of these interludes, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent room. "I've sung for presidents and kings. I've played the biggest stages in the world. But right now, singing with you, this is the most important show I've ever done. You got that? You're not just some kid in the audience. You're my duet partner tonight." Timothy smiled, and it was a smile of a child who knew he was dying, but who had just been given the greatest gift imaginable. His mother later said that in that moment, watching her son's face light up with pure happiness, she felt something shift in her grief. The unfairness of it all didn't disappear. No parent should have to bury their child. But alongside the sorrow was gratitude that Timothy had gotten this moment, this impossible, beautiful moment that existed because a famous entertainer had decided that one dying child mattered more than his show, his reputation, or the expectations of 600 paying customers. They sang for nearly an hour, far longer than any doctor would have recommended for a child in Timothy's condition. But the boy seemed energized by it, drawing on reserves of strength that shouldn't have existed. Dean never once checked his watch or glanced at the audience. His entire focus remained on Timothy, anticipating when the boy needed water, adjusting his position when breathing became difficult, keeping up a steady stream of encouragement and humor that made the child feel not like a dying patient, but like a genuine performer. Finally, inevitably, Timothy's energy began to fade. His voice dropped to barely a whisper, and his eyes started to close despite his efforts to keep them open. Dean finished "Everybody Loves Somebody" solo, his voice tender and aching with emotion that had nothing to do with performance. When the last note faded, he carefully stood, still cradling Timothy, and carried him back to his parents. "He's a real trooper," Dean said quietly, transferring the boy back to his mother's arms. "You've got a special kid there. You know that, right?" The mother couldn't speak, could only nod as tears continued to fall. The father shook Dean's hand, gripping it tightly, his own eyes red and swollen. "Thank you," he managed. "You gave him something we couldn't. You gave him joy." Dean's own eyes were suspiciously bright as he squeezed the father's shoulder. He pulled a card from his jacket pocket, scribbling something on the back. "This is my private number. You call me, okay? Day or night. You call me and let me know how he's doing. And if there's ever anything at all you need." His voice broke slightly before he steadied it. "You call." As hotel staff gently escorted the Callahan family out through a private exit to avoid the crowd, Dean stood alone on the ballroom floor, his tuxedo wrinkled, his bow tie hanging loose, looking nothing like the polished entertainer who'd started the show 2 hours earlier. He climbed back on stage slowly, retrieving his microphone with hands that trembled slightly. The audience sat in absolute silence, waiting. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dean's voice was rough, unpolished, real. "I apologize for the interruption, but I'm not sorry it happened. That little boy taught me something tonight. He reminded me why we do this. It's not about the lights or the money or seeing your name on a marquee. It's about connection. It's about making somebody feel something. And if my singing can give a dying child one good night, one happy memory, then every song I've ever sung was worth it." He paused, wiping his eyes unselfconsciously. "Now, I know you all paid good money to see a show, and I promise we're going to give you one. But I need you to understand something. That little boy, Timothy, he's the real star tonight, because he showed more courage in 1 hour than I've shown in my entire career. So this next song, and every song after it, is dedicated to him." The orchestra began playing Carolina in the Morning, but it was different now. Dean sang it straight. No jokes, no stumbling, no pretending to forget lyrics. His voice carried real emotion, the kind that can't be faked, and every person in that room felt it. They'd come for entertainment, for escape, for the carefully crafted illusion of cool sophistication. Instead, they got truth, messy and painful and beautiful. The show continued for another hour, but it was transformed. Dean still joked and bantered, but there was a weight to it now, an acknowledgement that life is precious and fragile, and we're all just trying to find moments of light in the darkness. The audience responded differently too, their applause warmer, their laughter tinged with the recognition that they'd witnessed something rare. When Dean finally took his final bow that night, the standing ovation lasted 10 minutes. But he later said that all the applause in the world couldn't compare to the sound of Timothy's voice singing alongside his, thin and wavering but full of life. Timothy James Callahan died 4 days later in his mother's arms, holding a signed photograph of Dean Martin and wearing a toy microphone around his neck. His last words were a line from That's Amore. The funeral was small, just family and close friends, but there was one surprise attendee. Dean Martin stood in the back of St. Patrick's Cathedral, in a simple black suit, saying nothing, just being present. After the service, he approached the parents one final time. "I wanted you to know," Dean said softly, "that singing with your son changed me. I've had a lot of big moments in my career, but that night with Timothy was the one that mattered most. He gave me a gift, and I hope I gave him one too. The story spread through Las Vegas like wildfire, though Dean never spoke about it publicly. The Sands Hotel tried to use it for publicity, but Dean shut that down immediately. This wasn't material for gossip columns. This was sacred. But the people who'd been in that ballroom told their friends, who told their friends, and the legend grew. Years later, when Dean's own children asked him about the night he stopped his show for a dying child, he would get quiet, his usual bravado falling away. Sometimes he'd say, "You get a chance to do something that actually matters. Most of the time we're just noise, you know? Just making sounds to fill the silence." But that night with Timothy, that wasn't noise. That was music. Real music. The kind that matters. The Sand Hotel Ballroom hosted thousands of shows after that September evening in 1962. Countless performers graced its stage, from Elvis to Sinatra to new generations of entertainers. But old-timers who worked there, bartenders and dealers and showgirls who'd seen it all, would sometimes talk about that one night when Dean Martin stopped being a performer and became something more. They'd talk about how the room changed, how the air itself felt different, charged with something holy that had nothing to do with religion and everything to do with humanity. The room never recovered because it didn't need to. That night became part of its foundation, a reminder that beneath all the glitz and gambling and carefully manufactured glamour, there was still space for genuine moments of grace.